All right, good evening, everybody, or another edition of the hobby stream here at Between the Balter and Me.
Hey everybody.
Hey
Hey,
everyone.
Eric. Hey, Greg. And tonight I'm happy to say we're joined by a hobby friend, Magos Bjor, who many of you may know from his work on Instagram, particularly the Gelida event on the frigid ice planet that recently happened. Nice to have you here tonight.
Oh, of course. Thank you guys for having me. It's extremely nice to finally have a real conversation with you guys.
Yeah,
And for
nah.
as long as we've been friends in the messaging ethos.
But yeah, it's nice to have you on just to kind of talk about hobby stuff and whatnot. Hopefully, sometime in the relatively near future, we'll be able to have you on again to actually talk about Gelida and sort of the whole creation process and how some of the events went and, just the whole process. But that will be another time. We just kind of wanted to have you on here to just talk and see how you were doing.
Probably make
Of course.
fun of some models. Or maybe
Yeah,
not
of
make
course.
fun, but at least discuss them in detail.
Yeah.
I don't often make fun of miniatures, but I think part of that is just because of the attempts I've made to sculpt things before. And
it's hard.
so
It is
when
very hard.
when I see miniatures put together, I try my best to just analyze them to some degree. But yeah, I'd be thrilled to come back and talk more about Gelida another time. But let me tell you, I'm more than happy to talk about something other than Gelida for an evening.
All
Yeah,
right, so
no.
this is an important thing. So now we finally learn it's pronounced Gelida. We've been pronouncing it
It's
wrong
Latin.
forever. Okay.
I hate to break it to most people, but I am not nearly as creative as I may seem. Gelida is simply the Latin word for ice.
Well,
Oh,
that's good. I mean,
That's all it
I
is.
feel that sort of stuff is done a lot. Like that's a great I
Yeah.
mean, certainly GW does it all the time, and then it's kind of also just a nice way that if someone does kind of look into it to see is there some root or something there, they can find that and oh, that makes sense. I mean, that's good. Do you have any?
Yeah, and
We'll continue.
Oh, I was going to say, to that very point that you brought up, for anyone who is watching, once we actually finish the lore section of the Gelida Codex, I'll make it available to the public. And when they dissect that, you watch, those who are watching this podcast live stream right now will have the secrets, so to speak, to maybe unlock some of the meanings behind everything on Gelida, because almost everything is Latin and almost everything has a purpose.
That's good. That's good.
hey, Captain
Most of the
Timberlake.
cities, most of the noble houses, most of the characters have roots in Latin words.
That's good.
And
Do you have
all
a
of them
Latin?
kind of reveal a little bit about the world.
Yeah. Do you know any Latin? Is it something you've studied at all?
No, not really. I wouldn't say that I really know any other languages other than English. I'm a dirty American. We're not very good at
I hate to say
culturing
I'm
ourselves.
the same as well. I mean, I feel Latin would have been something that would have been cool to learn, but never really had the opportunity. And I'm not particularly adept at learning other languages.
When the three of us
I wouldn't say that I am either.
When the three of us were in high school, we took a few years of German. But I don't feel like I remember too much of that aside from random phrases like "Was machst du am diesem Wochenende?" which is "What are you doing this weekend?"
But it was probably pronounced poorly.
Yeah. I mean, obviously.
Hey, I didn't actually take a formal class for German, but I used to work in a print shop with a friend. I shouldn't say print shop because it was basically just a warehouse. But when we were both in a band together, we both cut paper in there. And he would listen to these tapes that he had put on his iPod to learn German. And the fascinating thing that we both noticed, which strangely enough is connected to the one phrase that you happen to remember in German, is that almost everything is related to a pickup line. Almost everything when he was learning German was like, would you like a drink at 2:00? Or my hotel is down the street. It was very strange. I don't know who's structuring these. But perhaps there's some guy in a basement somewhere who's responsible for teaching Americans German, and he just thinks to himself, well, clearly they just all want to pick up German chicks.
Maybe.
Well, hey, Vox is here as well. So hi, Vox. Hi, Captain Timberley.
Yeah, nice that you're able to join us. Hope everyone's doing all right.
Well, I think Timberley, he's from Germany, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to speak in more German for you, but I wouldn't do it.
It's in the morning.
Yeah, it is, and it's pretty early in Germany now, like 5 a.m. or something. Don't even try.
I think what we're all trying to say is we're really grateful that your English is good enough that we don't have to be good at German.
Yeah.
Oh, and I feel also for other languages and stuff, it helps a lot if you can actually be immersed in
and use it more
and actually hear it often. Like so much of the language and stuff that I've had to learn was just like learning the like conjugation rules and grammar sort of stuff, and like sure you can memorize this or that, but it's no substitute to actually like trying to speak it and such. So not really having a good opportunity for it, like it's hard.
Yeah,
indeed.
But well, yeah,
I guess it's neither here nor there. We should maybe we want to get back to more of our standard features and talk a little bit more about models.
Well, before, like, maybe since you have some Bjor's, like his Instagram thing up here, there's something we could ask you. You posted something, it was either today or yesterday, about this like Tolkien bestiary. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that, where you found this, or?
It's not a terribly long story. I simply went to a barber shop today, and shout out to Anvil Barber Company in Utah. And the gentleman who owns the barber shop, I suppose, is a fan of Tolkien. He also had some books about Norse gods. And so as I was just waiting for my appointment to roll up, I saw this book, immediately recognized the beautiful artwork by the great Ian Miller, and just felt the need to share with everyone that.
Yeah, that's cool. Did he do like all the artwork in there, or most of it?
The majority of it.
The
majority of the artwork in there I ran into was by him. Someone mentioned in the comments when I posted, when I initially posted this book, that there perhaps might be some Blanche artwork in this book as well. But man, the spreads are absolutely gorgeous. I'm on the hunt now for my own copy. I know that it was authored by Davis Day, so I'm hoping that will help me narrow it down. But it was it was called the World of the Lord of the Rings, a Bestiary.
Well, so I wonder, like, how much stuff, like, how comprehensive is that book, and like how many interesting creatures and things are in there other than, oh, there are orcs and there are goblins and there are ents and there are big evil things.
I mean, he wrote so
I can
much
tell
stuff.
you
There's like
that
stuff.
I mean, I never read Lord of the Rings or the
Right.
Silmarillion. I only read The
Well,
Hobbit.
I can tell you that this particular book begins when the Silmarillion begins. It begins at the
Okay.
beginning of the world. I
Okay.
was reading just a short excerpt from it, and apparently one of the greater gods or the greater forces in the Tolkien universe created two lamps at the beginning of time that were eventually destroyed by some greater evil that existed even before Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Well, that's neat. It's neat to hear that it's like, I mean, it was like a comprehensive thing. I mean, admittedly, I assume this was done well before, like the films and all that stuff. So it's
oh
not
yeah,
like, and I think that's neat. It kind of speaks to the popularity of Tolkien's creations, that like there's so much love and this sort of stuff done for so long, even before it got even more popularized by the Peter Jackson stuff.
Yeah.
well, something that people underestimate is the force that Tolkien was. I dare say there might not have been a more complete fictional mythos
Hmm.
up to that point in time outside of the mythologies that people actually believed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It was almost as if he had created an entire new universe and documented the entire history of that universe up until now. I
Yeah,
mean,
nah.
which in a sense was kind of the purpose in
Mm-hmm.
a way. Middle Earth was to be essentially a fictional precursor to the Earth of which we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it was supposed to be the history before time, but my word, just how in depth and comprehensive and thought out that whole history is still shocking to this day. And I think every fantasy setting and creation and world that's been created since then, it kind of aspires to be just
Yeah, yeah.
that comprehensive.
And certainly owes a lot to it as well.
Mm.
But yeah, nah, it's true.
Dave X Dave is here. Hi, Dave X Dave. Or I was just gonna call you Dave. Hi, Dave.
Yeah.
And Timberlake mentioned in the comments here, said that was talking with some friends recently, saying that you pretty much have to speak English if you want to immerse yourself in a hobby,
Oh,
and get as much info about it as possible. Which that's an interesting thought. That
that saddens me a little bit, to be honest. I had always hoped that this hobby was extremely accessible, no matter what language or what culture you hailed from. But maybe I just underestimate, you know, just how popular it is around the world, or maybe it just doesn't necessarily translate all that well, considering that the world and the hobby itself is conceptualized in England. I don't
Well,
know how much of
I
this
feel so
kind
much
of
stuff like,
translated.
because I this is sort of unrelated, but just related in the sense of like English is kind of an important thing that people have, like many people have to learn for all sorts of reasons. But like a coworker in the laboratory that I like work in recently just got a new like professorship position in South Korea, and
Mhm.
he is forced, he has to teach all his classes in English.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
because um yeah, they're just like, if you want to be like in biology and research and stuff,
Hmm.
like you need to know English if you want to publish in like all the better journals and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
they're pretty much all in English, I guess.
Yeah,
Huh.
so and they're, oh, it's like, oh man, like your English is like so good and all this, like, no,
Yeah.
no, it's not. But
Oh.
yeah, it's funny. But yeah, so I feel, yeah, that's just like an increasing thing that like I guess, is something that is a good skill to have. And I guess we're fortunate that it's just the language we learn from the get-go, I suppose.
Very, very blessed. I'm extremely grateful for that privilege that I enjoy, that English is such a commonly used language.
Yeah, well, do we want to get back to like sort of hobby stuff?
Yeah.
Anyone working on anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I talk about this every week because I've been working on this for a while now, but I think I've just about finished the Mordheim Ogre that I'm working on.
You could work on that for the next 20 years and I would watch every single post, every single photo. I love this miniature so very much.
Eli Parsons is here. Hi, Eli. The guest we have here is Magos Bior, or Cody is Magos Bior.
Yes, real name is Cody, not as interesting as Buer, that's for sure. But you may call me Buer if you like.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this ogre. I want to know his story.
So it's essentially the main reason that I was making him is because I recently started playing Warcry with a bunch of people, and I decided instead of making a new warband, because that would take me like half a year, I would just use the Sisters of Sigmar that I had recently worked on and count them as iron golems. And on top of that, in Mordheim, if I'm playing the Sisters, depending on how well you do, there's a chance you can hire a hired sword for free after the end of a battle. And so if you ever roll well enough for that to happen, often what you would do is just choose the most expensive hired sword in the game, and that's an ogre. So I decided the Iron Golem's ogre model was good, one of the best, I feel, ogre models GW's put out. So it's like, well, this would be a good excuse to convert an ogre model that I could use both in Warcry and in Mordheim as a hired sword. So that was sort of the impetus for the conversion. Then on top of that, I thought, like, hey, you know what, this can be a fast conversion. I can do another, like, conversion corner post. Well, the whole conversion's gotten a little more complicated than I thought it initially would, and it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would. But I'm happy with where it's led. I'm now in the process of sculpting his base, which I sort of hate doing, but it's getting there. If you don't know, if you need to sculpt stone or brickwork, Milliput is a great way to do that. It has a more like a clay-like consistency and will sort of tear and break in believable ways as you might expect to see like stone or brick or something. So it's a good way to sculpt stuff like that if you've never used Milliput before. So that's what I started working on recently.
Since it's also pretty water soluble, you can kind of like cram it into gaps and whatnot, and then just like with the color shaper or whatever, put some water on it, and you can like easily kind of get rid of excess stuff, and like it works pretty nicely.
It's also really good based on how like water soluble it is. If you need to fill in like little tiny seams between two halves of a model you glue together, if you add enough water to the putty, you can almost just like paint it on and into those tiny little seams. And then once it hardens a lot harder than green stuff. So you can like shave at it or use a file or sandpaper to make it really smooth, something you really couldn't do with green stuff. So
yeah, it's nice.
If you look at like the shoulder on the ogre here, which currently I don't have his shoulder pad glued on, you can see on his armor there, that's kind of what I did to fill in some of those seams.
I am so enlightened by you guys and everybody that I've spoken to recently. Everything that I've ever sculpted was with green stuff, because I didn't know there was anything other than green stuff
Yeah, I mean, it took
until
me
just
years.
recently. I had a conversation with Polysmith from
Okay, yeah.
Instagram, and he harped for, I mean, got up on his soapbox with me for like half an hour about how just horrible green stuff is. I think he said something to the extent of green stuff, or he always thought that green stuff was an unfinished product, and he couldn't believe it went to market because
Yeah,
it
I
just.
mean it has its advantages and it certainly has its fair share of disadvantages. I feel the biggest disadvantage of it is how expensive it is. If you
Oh
compare
yeah.
the price of it, it's like ludicrously more expensive than, like, as people are saying, epoxy sculpt. I feel if I would
Mhm.
recommend any of the putties, I'd probably recommend epoxy sculpt because it functions very similar to green stuff, but it hardens as hard as Milliput, and it's like so much cheaper. It's like a crime. Um, and on top of that, if you still really love green stuff, if you mix epoxy salt and green stuff together in like equal amounts, um, you can work with the putty just like the green stuff you got used to, but then when it hardens, it actually hardens in a fashion where you can sand it. And like, so if you look at this golem model that I've worked on, all of the green there is not actually green stuff. It's a mix of epoxy sculpt and green stuff. Um, and it just works a lot better. And then on
Probably why
top
it
of
looks so good.
yeah, and on top of that, something that should be said, if you're working with green stuff, you really probably want to use some form of lubricant to prevent it from sticking to your hands and all your tools. Um, for years, I largely only used water, and water works pretty well as a lubricant, um, depending on the putty you're using. But if you use like a water-based hand cream or something, or I think even like Vaseline or something, and just put a little bit of that on like your tools, it is so much easier to do all things when it comes to sculpting. So I feel that's like a big important point that people often forget about or don't do, and it helps a
Or
lot.
don't know.
Yeah, it helps a
Or
lot.
don't know. I
Particularly if
hope
you're
that.
trying to use like metal tools. Metal tools are like impossible to use if you don't have like some lubricant or something on them because everything sticks to them and you just destroy anything you're trying to do.
um I only use metal tools with water. Don't hate me.
I mean, you can get it to work, but it's just
I've
much.
only ever used metal
Yeah.
tools with
Yeah.
water for everything I've ever sculpted. It's a
Well,
pain.
so if you
I didn't know until just now that Vaseline was acceptable to use with
like
sculpting. I'm gonna get some tonight, I'm
and
sure.
like so um what I don't know how you pronounce it. There's like a hand cream that um Nivea or NIVEA. You can buy it really cheap on Amazon. It's like a standard hand cream. Like lots of people I know use that, and I finally got some. And if you just add a little bit to your metal tools, like nothing, it just doesn't stick to them. And
Yeah, Eli was saying that here. He actually gave us the
yeah, that's
proper
it.
sponge.
Yes.
It's super cheap. It works so well. It's
Yeah, I
remarkable.
feel Mr. Pink from like Modern Synthesis is like
Yes, yeah.
talking
Oh
about
yeah.
it for a long time about how great it is, and like yeah,
So
it's
yeah, I
great.
mean, for years I've just been using like the color shapers, the silicon color shapers, and what's great about them is the silicon they're made out of. Green stuff doesn't stick to them nearly as well. So like I got by with them in water for a long time, and it like makes things so much easier. But if you just go a step further and use some other lubricant, yeah, like Dave says coconut oil works well too. So you have something. Just about everyone probably has something in their home, apartment, whatnot that you could use that would make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. So well, yeah. Actually, Adam, do you have a picture of the ogre next to like that Mad Meg model, just sort of like a scale image?
Let me look. Oh, I should have one somewhere.
'Cause, yeah, the ogre is pretty large. Although then, admittedly, like all of GW's models are sort of slowly increasing in size over the years. So you
Yeah,
might
and
not be
there
as
are
large
tons
next
of
to.
different putties that all sort of have slightly different characteristics that, depending on the application, can be really good and can be really helpful. Okay, here's a picture of the ogre compared to the Mordheim Mad Meg model. And that gives kind of a better sense of the scale of the model. He's pretty big.
He's a
Yeah.
big boy.
Yeah.
Well, it's also funny. It gives you a sense of like the size of the hammer that he has, which
Yeah, that's
some
true
have been
too.
like, oh, it's too small or whatever. But like, that's pretty huge in relationship to more of like a human size
Yeah.
figure.
Yeah, that's the kind of hammer that I expect even a war priest of Sigmar to be dragging on the ground.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Also, I mean, maybe later on in this stream we can talk. Games Workshop recently showed like I think it's a new Stormcast promotional miniature.
Ooh,
We can laugh about that
it's
later.
not a good model.
It's rough.
It's not a good looking model.
Okay, so that's what I've been working on. I'm almost done. I guess I can say I've also got some of the Wood Elf Blood Bowl team, and I've started working at some of those models to use in conversions. I feel them and some of the other Blood Bowl teams, I feel would be a great uh, starting point for different conversions, particularly the Wood Elves. They're proportioned really well. They're well muscled. Their poses and stances are a lot more believable than the standard heroic poses that most GW models are adopting.
Yeah, not every single one of them is in like the power metal stance.
Yeah, so that's good.
It's a good thing.
But I love crab core miniatures. Just going full,
yeah,
like full death core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throwing some pig squeals and we're good to go.
Yeah. Eric, you've been working on some of the little like bone trees, right? That
Yeah, no, I got a whole set of them from like Wilhelm Miniatures, and I've been working at them, kind of trimming them up, like getting rid of the few mold lines and filling in little bubbles and stuff. And I started an attempt to paint a few of them, just primarily airbrushing and some dry brushing stuff, just to try to work at them. And I don't know, I still have to do a bunch on them, but just kind of experimenting stuff to do, and hopefully I'll be able to finish painting them relatively quickly.
you could probably do a lot with like the different like oil paints and like enamels too.
Yeah, no, I did. I started to do a little bit with some oil and enamel stuff this evening, but I feel like there's more I can do. But they're nice just because, unlike sort of acrylic washes and stuff, when you're working on such a large surface, like they dry so quickly, making it easier to see brush strokes and stuff. Whereas like if you're using sort of an enamel or some sort of oil paint, since it takes much longer to dry with just some like white spirits. You can pretty much remove most of it, and it's easier to blend and not see brush strokes and things like that. So I'm gonna try to go back and do more with that.
You know that I actually have 12 of these.
Oh wow!
The
I
trees.
went a little overboard.
Well, I mean, it's
They're cool.
probably a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, I think so.
I certainly hope so, and I'm extremely grateful to him for being willing to part with that many all at once. It was a big box.
You have
Yeah,
a whole forest then.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's cool.
I want to finish some of them so we can maybe use them in games of Warcry or something like that. Because I've slowly been assembling some of the Warcry terrain as well. But that requires a lot more work than these trees because of like the mold lines everywhere. But I mean, that's just plastic. So it is what it is. And I finished painting those two miniatures there, which I think I talked about last time, that I finally finished painting some of those Anna's like Kickstarter miniatures.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's the one Warcry piece of terrain.
You should paint that too, Eric. But I won't put it past you to not. I wouldn't want to do it.
I'll maybe eventually, but I feel I would paint some of the buildings before I would paint the big Sigmar head.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. All right, so that's kind of like largely what we've been working on. Greg, do you have a band you want to talk about?
Well, before that, I guess I can say I haven't been working on models because I don't work on models. But recently, or this coming Friday, so in a few days, I'm giving a talk at a local herpetological society. So we are interested in amphibians and reptiles and stuff. And the talk that I'm giving is about a fungus, chytrid fungus, that's been decimating amphibian populations around the world it's been a while now, like probably at least 20 years. But one of the things that I was reading about was some of the species of frog that have went extinct in Australia, and I know that Vox here is from Australia. There's one, the gastric brooding frog. Have any of you heard about the gastric brooding frog?
I don't know.
There
if
are
I
two
have.
species of gastric brooding frog, and they raise their young, from my understanding, in their stomach.
Oh.
And then they would come out their mouth. But there were
That's
two species, both of which they haven't seen since 1985. So they're both extinct. But they were only at very specific places in Queensland, Australia.
Okay.
And the thought is that maybe this chytrid fungus had something to do with their extinction, but they don't know that for certain. But yeah, so that's what I've been working on. And in the meantime, I've been listening to a band called Left Lane Cruiser. So they're a two-piece blues rock band, kind of like the Black Keys, like the earlier Black Keys, but a little more raw sounding.
Was there a particular album you're listening to?
Claw Machine Wizards, one of their newer ones. It's great. I feel like I like their older albums the best because they're more rough and gruff to them.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, they're great.
One of these days, Greg, me and you are going to have to talk music.
Yeah, we should do that.
Sure. Considering that's my primary career.
Yeah. Listen to Left Lane Cruiser, everybody. They're touring around all the time, at least in the United States, playing small bar venues and stuff. So they certainly have not made it big.
This Saturday, it seems they're playing near you, Greg.
Yeah, they're playing basically in my hometown this Saturday. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be there.
The Lizard Lounge.
It's gonna be great.
Well,
That'll be great.
when you check them out, you'll have to let me know how they are. I'll see if they have any dates in Utah.
I mean, so I saw
Check
them once like 6 months ago, and they were great.
Nice.
So I presume they'll still be great.
That would be a tragedy.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
They weren't
seeing a
anymore.
band that was incredible, and then 6 months later they just fall apart.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Doubtful.
gonna happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, doubtful. I'm
Um,
sure they're still amazing.
Gaslight Anthem? You talking about Gaslight?
Oh, yeah, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the band Gaslight Anthem. They are kind of like a Bruce Springsteen-inspired punk rock band that I really liked for a while. Their first 2 albums were great, and they felt genuine and like singing about hardships that they themselves went through. And then they kind of got a little bit more popular, which, I mean, that's fine. Like, you hope that bands get popular and then can make a living out of their music. But
That's true.
it felt like Gaslight Anthem then kind of like they moved to New York and then started writing about like things that didn't seem like they lived, or writing about New York City, and like it just didn't seem genuine anymore. And I mean, the music was probably still good, but boy, wasn't what they used to be.
Yeah, well, that's
They
neither
also
here nor there. Oh shit, yeah, Eli, it's zombie time.
Yeah, so their first album, one of the songs had a sound bite from the second Vampire Hunter D movie, Bloodlust, and it's zombie time. So Eli, did you know that, Eli? Eli's watching. Eli, did you realize that that's a sound clip from the English dubbing of the second Vampire Hunter D film? Yeah, Lifeboat, our friend Lifeboat Sank is here too, and he's the one that actually told us about Gaslight Anthem initially. I remember we were in college, and I think it was a magazine. He got maybe it was a guitar or rock magazine that had a CD of different bands, and there was a demo of a Gaslight Anthem song, and it was fucking great.
Those demos were like better than all their recorded stuff. Yeah.
And yeah, so Lifeboat told us about Gaslight Anthem, and then when they released one of their albums, we drove to New York City and saw them play a show in.
It was 59 Sound. It was their second. It was their second album. It was like a release thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw them play a show
down by all the
basement of
T-shirts in the small record shop. That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. Like maybe let's move on. Yeah. Although it would be fun to maybe we should have an episode that's more about music sometime. I don't know if people would actually be interested in that, but whatever. I mean, these streams tend to just be us rambling on anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, well, all right. I guess moving on, it doesn't, Games Workshop hasn't really revealed too many exciting models, but I suppose they've been kind of slowly revealing more models for the Aussie Arc Bone Reapers.
And I didn't even remember that's what they were called, Eric.
I didn't remember it. I'm looking at it right here. I wouldn't.
Okay, well, so I feel this whole range of models is a really weird one. I feel almost universally I don't really like any of the models, but I feel a lot of them could find their way in a lot of interesting conversions and stuff. But just recently, what is it? The Soul Mason, one of the strange and sinister heroes that command the
Mortison's Soul Mason.
He sitting like Indian style in this weird ambulatory bone throne. And I don't know, like I
I
really
like it.
like
Calls
their
back to
faces.
the slan, like the lizard men, the big toad guy floating on his little stone seat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Kind of
Slan Mage.
reminds me of that. That kind of makes me smile seeing that sort of connection there. But
You know that there's a lore reason for these connections as well, right?
I
Like,
mean, I would imagine there is, but I don't know that lore reason.
Right.
Enlighten us,
Well,
Cody.
I can tell you that although these miniatures may look strange on the surface, they represent, at least in my mind, one of the most characterful lore advancements for Nagash so far, because it's so perfectly Nagash.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm sure everyone has noticed that there is kind of a similarity between what these Bone Reapers actually are and what Stormcast Eternals actually are.
No,
Because these are simply bone constructs that hold souls within them and then act within the world.
Yeah.
So we all know how petty Nagash is, if you know anything about Warhammer Fantasy.
Hold your horses there, Cody. I don't know them that well, man. I remember the old model was legendarily bad.
Yes, legendarily bad. Well, in the lore, Nagash is a very, very petty god. And he believes that all souls within the world belong to him. And that every soul that isn't given back to him is essentially an affront to him. He's very petty. Imagine very similar to like a Greek god or a Roman god. You know, they always had their, petty disagreements, and all of their stories, almost made them seem worse than humans in a way. Well, Nagash is very much that way, which is why, at least from a lore perspective, these Bone Reapers are perfect, because he essentially said,
cool.
"What, you're going to take a soul and then you're going to put it in armor? Well, I'm going to put like 10.
I have lots of souls.
10 in mine, and then you got your demon lizard man, like mage dude, sitting in your floaty throne. Well, mine has legs.
Yeah,
and it has like 15 souls in it. And
it's like, I'm gonna make a better Stormcast, like with hookers and blackjack.
Mostly what Bone Reapers are. I think that it was Nagash's very petty and childlike answer to everything that Sigmar's been up to.
Yeah, I do kind of like that sort of narrative thread.
So it is
doesn't excuse how weird the models are. They're very weird. I'll give you that.
They are like servants of Nagash, then.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many visual cues. It's like crazy.
But I mean, he's wearing almost the exact same hat.
Also, I mean, it's interesting in the post where they show the ambulatory throne dude. They show one of the earlier models they made. One of the guys riding some bone construct, and I mean that has a lot of the same visual elements and stuff, but it looks a lot better.
Wasn't that an end times model?
Yeah, it looks so much better to me.
I think the details look crisper.
Yeah, the designs and stuff look a lot more natural than a lot of the Bone Reaper models they're showing now.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I still kind of think the ambulatory Baba Yaga throne thing here is better than some of the other ones. Like, I think.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's pretty good. Like, I don't really like the face at all, but I mean, that's fine. Like, not everyone has to have an awesome skull face. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
well,
it's something.
Does anyone
he looks so much like a cranky old man to me.
Well,
Yeah,
if
I
you
mean,
Don't you
were
think when you
given
look at
this,
that face?
I
You
agree.
should be able to tell that this person had an ass chin when he still had flesh by his skull. You shouldn't be able to tell that, but you can.
Oh, so it's probably it's not even a skull.
and I mean,
It's
this
more
isn't
like
like the skeleton of a thing. I don't think, right? It's just a construct that
made of bone or
made of
something.
bone.
Correct.
That
The Bone Reapers are not skeletons. They're not
Yeah.
skeletons at all.
But
They're
aren't they
simply
like made of pieces of bone
I'd imagine
assembled
it's
together?
just fused together in weird carapace and shit.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
where
so-
the Tyranids came from, everybody.
Clearly. Well, so if Cody, if you were given the ambulatory throne thing, what would you do with it?
Oh, many things. I could imagine quite a few different things. I think that you could make quite an interesting demonic style miniature by sculpting out many of the bone-like details in the Rider of the Throne itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost like that it doesn't have the typical features you would find in a skull, that it doesn't have teeth and it doesn't have nostrils. Because if you were to connect that jawbone together and then add a few more, creepy features, you could very quickly make some type of perhaps undivided style demonic host of a kind. And
Yeah.
I feel that way about a lot of the character models. This character model also reminds me a lot of the Bone Reaper model they revealed recently that almost looks as if it's a Greek statue until you look at it up close. You know that character who has he has like a retinue on his base,
Yeah, I
that's
think
the
that's
best
shield and a spear.
model, the leader.
I think
that's
that I
by far the
agree.
best
I think.
model.
Well, maybe because I feel that one is the most subtle and crisp looking. Because I think you had a picture up briefly of another model that they revealed, which is more like a champion on this big horse thing. And
to me, that's like a fucking mess. Like
it's so.
The horse itself just looks so.
This looks like it's a War Machine model.
Yeah, I guess.
This is Greg. This is coming from people who don't really look at War Machine models and have never played it.
There is, the War Machine just has very strange cartoonish proportions, and
that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah.
Though, mind you, I haven't played War Machine, and I don't spend that much time looking at the models. So it looks like what I envision a War Machine model to look like based on minimal exposure to it.
But I feel the model, like just everything. I mean, I guess it's because like it isn't just like a normal horse or something. Like even like its front legs or whatever are made of like pseudo rib cages and stuff. Yeah. So like it's a crazy construct thing, which is, I mean, whatever. But I feel because everything's so fat and chunky looking, it loses
to me,
some
it just looks like okay, we need to make a skeleton construct horse. What can we do? Let's give it a couple bone tails. It's like legs and shit. Let's just make them rib cages. Then inside we can have some spirits and shit. And yeah, I don't know. We'll have something sitting on top of it, and it'll be okay.
Have you seen the character model that's riding a similar mount? This is a part of a unit, but there is another miniature that I recently saw that they spoiled that's riding a similar mount to this. It's another strange construct, big chunky thing, but somebody took that miniature, this one right here, this miniature. Okay, if you take this miniature and you put it right next to Valdis Hammerhand, I think is his name. He was the original like Dracoth character model that came in the original Stormcast corn box.
It looks like that.
Nearly the same proportions, the same pose, same everything. Again, it's a visual cue to exactly what Nagash's intentions are here. He is just trying to just one up Sigmar. Now, you have Dracoths? Well, I have bone Dracoths and bone shields and bone construct people riding them, and I think that didn't translate as well on the main horse cavalry unit. Yeah, because I agree that other one is so much more of a mess than this model is.
This one looks a lot better,
And in a similar fashion, I think that the actual Dracoth unit does not look quite as good as Valdis Hammerhand, although they look far superior to the normal unit version of this guy. But this guy doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, he really doesn't. But I kind of feel like the artwork of all of these will look cooler than the model. They'll look like a little bit less like bulky and fat, chunky details and such. And I think, in some of it, I guess, you can't make the stuff too thin or they're all just going to snap off the moment you put it in your case or whatever.
If you compare those models with, I just put up a picture of the leader model.
This guy's gorgeous.
It's night and day. This is just so much better than pretty much all the rest of the stuff. Everything about it is to me seems like it's much more considered and proportioned, and this to me looks a lot more believable, and it looks like it's actually a part of a world rather than just a mass of cool details.
But then even with that, you see in the background there's that little guy with the banner, and he doesn't look so good.
Yeah, he looks a little wonky. But
the leader itself, I think his hands actually reach his knees.
Yeah, that's it. His arms look so bad.
Cody, that's fucking cool. That's fucking cool. And actually, hold up.
Maybe he is actually constructed from a gorilla or a similar type.
Anyway, hold up, everyone. I just had a revelation. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at this, the retinue dudes. You see the samurai dude in the black armor?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is actually the main character of that anime film that Sturgill Simpson's new record is about. You know who Sturgill Simpson is? He's like an American country artist that I think he won a Grammy 2 years ago or something for his one album. And he just released a new album called Sound and Fury. And I haven't really listened to it, but it's apparently not. It's not really a country album.
It's not.
He's kind of expanded beyond that, and he worked with some Japanese animation studio to make some 40-some minute anime movie thing that's on Netflix. I think it is probably also called Sound and Fury. And that samurai dude in the black armor looks like, or that's what I think of when I see that person.
He also that one more than any of the other ones reminds me kind of some of Ian Miller's illustrations and stuff too, to be honest.
Agreed.
I feel if more of the Bone Warriors looked a little bit more like that and have kind of longer, thinner legs and look a little bit more lithe and agile, I think I would be more excited about them. But
his arms and legs and stuff don't look nearly as ham-fisted and clumsy as a lot of the other models in the range.
So Timberlake's been saying some stuff, saying that he likes the faction and that he's happy that GW is finally bringing some weirdness into the hobby. and then
I'm kind of okay with that too.
all the things have conversion possibilities. And so I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, Age of Sigmar has been an opportunity for GW to kind of turn away from the standard Tolkien-esque fantasy and maybe add new interesting things, their own things. So it's good to see them doing more of that.
Like the fish elves,
Yeah.
Idoneth,
do you think
Deepkin, like they're cool. Like it's
they
neat.
never
that
would have
they're
fit into original Warhammer Fantasy?
it-
Neither would the All Fire Slayers faction.
Actually,
You know,
this is sort of going back to the models itself, how we were talking about the leader model, whatever his name is, how he looks like so much better. And it's interesting in how we were making fun of the banner bear in the back, how he looks kind of bad. This, like, I feel this model encapsulates a lot of interesting things. Like, to me, it shows, like, the pinnacle of what the models and the range could be. And then at the same time, it also encapsulates, like, shows, like, some of the worst aspects. Like, the guy with the banner, like, his hands are literally the same size, if not bigger, than the leader model. And, like, look at the size disparity between them. Like, there's a reason that Banner Bear, like, with his hands being that big, he looks worse than the leader guy.
Yeah.
Like,
probably the person that sculpted the leader dude is not the same person that sculpted all of those retinue dudes.
or so the person who sculpted the samurai dude probably is the one who sculpted the leader dude, and then like
The
the
banner
bear and the guy holding up the scroll, like that's probably someone different, because like the hands and arm placements look really clumsy and unnatural on.
It just seems like a different design cues or thoughts. Yeah. Which is interesting.
all I see is a challenge.
Oof.
Yeah.
Cody, you've been talking about all the good stuff you're going to do with Baba Yaga cross-leg chairs. So when it comes out, I am going to buy it and I'm going to send it to you.
Oh, you don't have to do that. That's
All right,
extremely
I'm
kind
gonna
of you.
do
But
it. I'm gonna
I
do
don't
it.
know if that's kind.
I'm gonna do it, and you're gonna.
I mean, if you did send it to me, I would absolutely send back to you probably 3 or 4 different miniatures out of it.
No, I mean you keep them. You could keep them.
But I do think this line has a lot more potential than people realize, and not just in AOS itself, but just across a more broad range of conversions. By that same note, it's the thing I love about Age of Sigmar. As soon as they took hold of their own IP and just decided that they were going to make original things and take risks, I got back into fantasy again. I liked Warhammer Fantasy to an extent, but it just kind of grew stale to me, for that very reason. The same reason that fantasy in general just has grown stale in a sense to me. I play a lot of tabletop RPGs, or at least I have over the years, especially when I wasn't playing Warhammer. And I liked building fantasy worlds that felt completely foreign to people. And that's what Age of Sigmar represents to me. I have a bunch of models sitting right next to me here in my garage of the Sky Dwarves. I forget their names.
Carrion Overlords, or it's something like that. Yeah.
And I know that steampunk dwarves and airships are not necessarily unique concepts, but in the world of Warhammer, or just in the fantasy wargaming world in general, that it was pretty monumental, at least to me.
And I think it was a good sense to like really show that, like, hey, in Age of Sigmar, we are going to try some new interesting things, because initially, like Stormcast, like they're basically Space Marines. The Bloodbound are basically just more Khorne, whatever. The Dwarves was just like Slayers. And so like they were neat and such, but they were still kind of following some of the same stuff. But then I feel then the Sylvaneth were a little bit diverging from like the Wood Elf look, and then they've
Yeah.
progressively done more and more. And I think the Overlords was maybe the first that was like, wow, like they really are trying to do some new interesting things. So I think that is
So
exciting.
based on that, I think we should transition into talking about the new Stormcast model.
New promotional miniature, so good.
Do we have to?
We do.
Do we have to?
We do have to. And like I think this I mean, to me, like the initial Stormcast models when they released Age of Sigmar, I kinda like them. And then there have been a few releases since then that have been really good. But to me it just seems like they keep releasing more and more, and in some sense they get worse and worse. And this model I feel is a perfect representation of Games Workshop falling back on their like what they always do. Big ass weapons, crazy extended squatting pose.
Like if you look at this model from the back,
Yeah,
look
they
how
show a picture
far
of the
the
back
legs,
tank for
how
it.
far the legs are apart. It's like he sat on a horse for his entire life, and his bone structure perhaps like slowly shifted to accommodate always sitting on this horse.
Imagine him trying to walk like that to maintain that stance.
I don't know. It's remarkable, I feel.
And like the
Can you
purity
imagine
steel
being
stuff.
in battle and standing like that?
Yeah, no. It's
No.
If you were struck by anything
yeah.
I'm
at all,
getting up, I'm gonna try to. Oh, that feels natural.
Yeah, just try.
and I'm telling you, that Stormcasts may just be souls, but I bet you they go down just as hard when you give them a good ding to their metal
Yeah.
gongs. Just take a hammer right between those legs, and he's out for the count. Still with his legs spread apart on the ground, at least 4 feet apart.
His bone structure is made like that, like his.
Right.
Sigmar wanted that when he forged them.
Yeah, just they don't even walk, they waddle.
Yeah.
Timberley says that at least the model is not Caucasian, and that's true. Like that's a step.
But
in the right
that's not necessarily even true, because people are going to paint it however they paint it.
Well, yeah, that is always.
It's as far as like official box art goes. They obviously in recent years, GW has diversified the palette of skin color, which is great. But at least in my personal opinion, I liked Stormcast better when they were just in helmets, because I always imagined them to just be like a soul encapsulated in there.
Yeah, I get that.
Well,
maybe
it'll be whatever you want to paint it. I mean, for example, all of the Slayer line are all Caucasians on the box art, but they look much better in any other skin tone whatsoever. I don't know what it is about those models. They drive me absolutely insane because of the same stance issues that you see with this model. The Slayers are just as bad. Their baseline infantry all stand exactly like that, except that they're in no armor, so it's even worse. But for some strange reason, anytime that I've seen any of those models painted with a more African tone or a more Hispanic tone of skin color, they're gorgeous. They just look so much better that way. It's odd, but all miniatures are going to be whatever color people want to paint them. That guy could be pink. He could be purple. He could be
I mean,
whatever.
I guess admittedly, at least the facial structure isn't like the standard Space Marine look. So I mean, they've done a little of that, but at least that. I mean, you can obviously paint it however you want, but it's nice that they aren't just using the exact same like yelling Space Marine head.
And the thing is that I find is so weird. Like, if you took this model and actually made him like standing up in a more natural way, he would be a lot taller and a lot more imposing looking.
Yeah,
he would.
And like, you almost feel like they're doing this because they think it'll like make him look like action oriented and like strong or so. Or I don't know. Like there has to be a reason they always put them in these poses. But like it just
He's not standing on a rock. That's something,
That's
right?
Yeah, his
true.
foot's not up on a rock. That's a triumph.
But
And
there's
but
still like a dead helmet of a chaos
Yeah.
dude right next to him.
He
It's
wouldn't
There's
have
always that.
on there.
Yeah, so it's at least he's not on the rock.
hmm
hmm
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
bad. It's bad. It's a bad looking model. And but I feel like if you just changed his leg positioning and made the weapons smaller, he'd look good. He'd look fine.
hmm
But
You know, I know this is a really small detail, but I'm a little bothered that the wind itself seems to be affecting his clearly metal necklace by the same exact tone that it's affecting the paper.
yeah,
Like
I mean,
clearly
I
that
think
hammer
that's
is made
because
of
he's like shifting
steel.
around all weird. That's what's getting at. He's like, that's not the wind. That's with him like gyrating around.
Mhm.
Oh, just like that.
Just like that. That's where it comes from, I
Okay,
bet.
just
That's the
I just hope you know
dynamic.
that's on the internet forever.
Yeah.
I like your moves though. I like your moves.
Yeah.
I like that Eli made the point that if Greg buys me something and sends it to me, it's not out of kindness. That's what I like. Eli, I don't know if you're telling the truth or not, but I suppose I will find out because Greg seems intent on sending me bone reapers.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So long as the Baba Yaga Mortarian, whatever the fuck it's called, isn't $80. It's not
I
$80.
don't think it'll be that
It's
much.
gonna be.
It'll, but I mean, it'll probably be. I don't know. It's hard to know if it comes with other things or whatever. But
All right,
whatever, we'll
It
find
looks
out.
like Dave has a pretty important question here.
someone
He
just
asks, for
getting
someone
into-
getting into GW kits, any suggestions for starting parts for kits and conversions?
I guess, is there a particular, like, are you hoping for like Imperial stuff or
Yeah. Dave, are you asking for the purpose of making your conversions look more like the Ink 28 style of miniature kit bashing, or are you looking to convert up something particular if you're looking to get started? Because there are a lot of different kits that are fantastic for making conversions and making miniatures, but it depends on the style that you're going for.
I mean,
yeah, no, it is
for
true.
me, like I've always looked at if you really want to make something, I always try and find the GW models that have like the most believable or like the best proportions and poses and stuff, and then try and work from there. Like for instance, like a lot of my Imperial Guard conversions and stuff have all been based on some of like Simon Egan's Forge World, like Death Corps and Elysian drop troops and stuff.
But
And that was primarily
Gorgeous.
just because if you compare them to all of the other Games Workshop humans, they just look a lot better.
unfortunately, a bunch of them aren't.
Yeah,
You can't even buy them anyway.
Eli says the Empire
Flagellants.
are really good, and they are actually really good. They have pretty believably disheveled looking male characters, and they also have like nice looking robes and stuff. So they are a really good starting point for both like fantasy
Mhm.
stuff and also like Ink 28 stuff. Like they look really
All their
good.
weapons are terrible, though.
Oh yeah, they're way over
Their
the top.
weapons are awful. You can't use them. But they're like muscled arms, their bodies and torsos, their robed legs are all good. And I
Well,
know
so-
like for a lot of the like models and stuff I made for the Pilgrim Inc. 28 event years ago, like I used a lot of that stuff.
Well, so what kits more recent kits, perhaps, do you just keep going back to getting stuff from? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, there's definitely such a thing. 100%. I think almost everybody continues to pull pieces from the Gene Stealer line,
The Gene Stealer
without a
cult
doubt.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Gene Stealer
those
cultist stuff are pretty nice. They have a good selection of weapons and such that are not horrible.
A lot
Yeah, I
of the
feel like
new Warcry stuff, like if you are interested
Oh
in
yeah.
making more human scaled stuff that looks good, the Warcry stuff's great. The unmade models are some of the nicest looking human models I've seen GW make. Like they're great. Like I'm gonna be using them in some conversions. The same thing's true about the like Corvus Cabal, like
Hmm.
those models, they're great. Like if I were just starting and I wanted to make some more like human esque stuff, either for fantasy or for like futuristic 40K stuff, I would buy the unmade models and the Corvus Cabal models because they're quite a bit nicer than a lot of the
But like
other
one thing,
GW human stuff.
the Skitarii like Rangers are pretty nice in the sense that they go pretty well with like scale wise with the Gene Stealer called Neophyte models because I think Darren Latham designed them too. Like they work pretty well.
Cool
Um,
stuff, boys. He wants Rust and Decay, he says. Rust and
Yes.
Decay.
Well, so related to that, the unmade, all of their weapons kind of have a really like barbed, rusty kind of look to them, and
Bring
they're
up a
also
picture, man.
yeah,
Bring up
let's
a
try.
picture.
Um,
And fucking one of the dudes doesn't have skin on his face. That's fucking
Uh,
cool.
Technically, all of
All
them
of them
don't have skin
don't.
on their face.
Well, but the one you can see that he doesn't have skin on his
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
Yeah, but did you know that you don't have to put the masks on them?
No.
just for one of them. One of them's like lifting
There,
his mask up.
most of these models, you don't actually have to put that
Well, do they
that
have
skull mask
their,
over the top, and you see underneath.
you see that you do see underneath their mask then
Yep.
if you don't put it on? So they
Yeah,
have
So like
that was
skin
what I
left-
was told.
that's not true, unfortunately. Um,
It,
if you
well,
look,
you could see there from the picture that you could see the bloody skulls
but
from that picture you showed up just a second ago. That's their face without the masks.
also, so they have these kind of overly sized like helmets where their eyes are.
Mhm.
They're like metal, like nails and stuff, which look cool. And then one of them, and I think it's only one, and like I've looked at all the sprues and stuff. Actually, let me take it. I think I can take a picture of the back of the box.
Yeah, only one of them actually has the like.
The face pulled off.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Those tusks are so incredible on that model.
Yeah, I feel they're
Those are
nice. They're proportioned in a slightly more true scale too, which is cool.
All of their weapons and stuff are pretty small and look kind of barbed and wicked looking. Like, okay, so here, there we go. It's a bad picture, but they make one version where they're pulling up their like metal mask, and you can see their flesh was torn off, and all of them are wearing their faces as like a belt buckle, which is kind of fun.
That's one way to put it. You know what would be fun, guys?
Yeah, tear off your face. Tear the skin off your face. You
Tear
got
off
that.
your skin, but it would re-epithelialize pretty quick. Your it's really adept at healing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, by the way, Dave. He just said that he took a look at one of my posts with a Ice World cultist. If you're curious how I made that, it's pretty simple. I simply took the unfortunately no longer in print Forge World Chaos Cultist upgrade sprues, and I did some shaving and some carving to put them onto Gene Stealer cultists instead of on normal Imperial Guard like you're supposed to. So that's why that model looks the way that it does, if that's the guy you're looking at. I wish I could just buy 10 of these boxes of Unmade and just use them for everything.
Yeah, they're great. And as Eli's saying, the Hobbit goblins
Oh yeah.
are
I wonder
actually
if I
a
can find
really good
those.
fit for weird humanoid things.
I wonder if they even sell them anymore.
Oh, they do.
It's just their search function on their website is so bad.
It's not great.
Horrible.
I believe if you look up Goblin Town that you can get them to come up, but you can just look up the Forces of Evil.
These Goblin Warriors, if you want really disheveled, screwed up looking things that aren't so huge and massive, these are like a perfect place to start. And like you see them all over the place, used in like conversions and stuff for like mutated, horrible looking creatures. So they're great.
Heading on down to Goblin Town.
Yeah, if you want like some like more futuristic like humans and like armor and stuff, I think the new like Necromunda Enforcer models.
They just need abdomens.
Well, yeah.
And their legs need to be closer together.
Though they're pretty good. Like their weapon design's also a little better than most of the GW stuff. They overall look pretty good. I think their boots are too big, like most GW things. Like they make their feet so big, it's like questionable. And
they're still better than the
They still kind of their posing is still probably a little broader than what you might want it to be, but it's not nearly as shitty as some of the GW models. They also, a bunch of the poses and stuff are a little more interesting. If you compare these to like the old Imperial Guard Stormtrooper / Scion models, these ones, their boots and feet are still too big. They're articulated and they look less. They look a lot nicer than
less like just balloons.
Like Eli just said, the Necromunda Cawdor kit, and he's right about that. Like if you want kind of Nurgle-esque disheveled people.
Yeah, I feel most of the Necromunda kits, other than the Orlok ones, in my opinion, are good for conversions. I don't know if I love them just straight out of the box, but I think they're good for converting stuff.
Oh, Dave, yeah. The model that you're talking about was actually converted from a model you can still get. That particular Ogren is one of 3 that I've made. He's the only one that's fully painted right now. But the Mare Salam Deep Sea Diver Ogrins were made from the Solaire Auxilla Ogrins from the Horus Heresy line. It's a particular type of Imperial Guard that's specific to the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, those models are great.
I actually still have 3 unbuilt Solaire Auxilla Ogrins for future projects.
That's cool. And the normal human Solar Auxiliary guys are nice too.
So good. And if you ever want to see some pretty great conversions with those for the human versions of that line where the Ogren come from, this is the Ogren right here. He has it pulled up now. But the humans from this line as well were used when when Tyler put together his group for Mar Salam. You can find him. He's Rouge Falcon 5 on Instagram. Tons of followers. You won't miss him.
Yeah, he has
if you
a
look
lot
him
of
up.
cool stuff.
And yeah, it was interesting that we both independently had a similar thought. I had not seen his miniatures or even met him when I first put together my Ogren. And then the first time that we met was at the Mar Salam event. And I brought one of these Ogren, and almost his entire warband was comprised of converted versions of the human versions of this particular miniature line.
Is the solar line dead? Can you not buy a lot of those?
It's not dead,
They,
but I do
I think
believe
they've
that
gotten rid
some
of
of
a
the
lot of
Solar
it.
Auxila are out of print. Some of them. But most of them are still there.
Oh,
As you can see,
yeah.
there's still 3 pages of them.
Okay, so there's...
Oh, well, I don't know why the robots are in there. That's odd.
Yeah, so some of them are still here. Yeah, they are. But, like, they had a cool Medicae sort of, like, special character that they stopped making.
I actually have him. He comes with the retinue, right?
I
Yeah.
think he had, like, a... Yeah, he was
Did
cool.
he out of print now?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
stopped
out of
making
print.
them.
He went out months.
Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah,
He was
they
one of the
stopped.
best parts of that whole line.
I think
I'm
he
so glad
was.
that I have him.
Yeah, I think he was
Lord,
like the best. Yeah, no, they went out of
that
print.
command squad though is killer as well. That's on my wish list.
Yeah,
Need
no,
to
they
get my hands
stopped.
on that.
Forge World they stopped producing a lot of their better models in favor of questionable looking Space Marine models.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm quite frustrated that renegades are just no longer available at all. And then they replace them with those Runestorm demons who I'm not sure exactly.
Not in
Come
love
on,
with
people
them.
like the Diablo video games. They kind of look like that. They got a market there.
Well,
right?
not anymore after Blizzard's clusterfuck of...
Yeah.
Yeah, so now people don't want them, Adam. They don't want the Runestorm things
Oh
anymore.
my god, everybody. So let's talk about this. We talked about this before. So they just recently released this Dark Angels Legion Praetor model, and it looks like it's temporarily out of stock. And to me, that just like baffles me.
Because I bought them all.
It is such a shitty model. Like, I can't even get over how shitty it is. Like, if you look at these close-ups of the detailing looks terrible compared to like old Forge World models. The model literally has no abdomen. His pose is horrible. His weapons look horrible.
Those little keys look kind of thin and well sculpted.
That's about the only thing I could say that is kind of good. But what a miserable looking model. And people, look at his torso. His torso looks so bad.
The 15 years of waiting for Dark Angels models to...
It culminated in this. Wow.
I love the Dark Angels, but fuck, this is a bad model.
Yeah, like if you got into the hobby now and this is what you saw when someone mentioned the Dark Angels, I would have immediately turned away.
He looks so
fortunately
caricatured.
Fortunately for Forge World, it seems like a lot of people disagree.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean,
true. Lots of people.
But to me, it seems like a lot of the people who are
I bought
wanting stuff like this, they would have purchased. It doesn't matter what the model looked like; they would have purchased it and said it was awesome.
Yeah, I got 10.
God,
all those miniatures you got stored away, Greg. So many.
Yeah.
God, it looks so awful.
I just can't look at normal Space Marines. They're just
look at how
so
his arms
ridiculously
attach,
caricatured.
How his arms attach, or rather, don't attach to his body.
I think it's interesting. The picture you had up where it kind of has a comparison of his unhelmeted head to the helmeted head. Like the helmeted head looks smaller than the unhelmeted head,
Oh.
or practically.
Well, yeah, like his helmet, his like head without the helmet. I don't know if that helmet could fit over that head.
I don't think it could. I think with the helmet it looks better. Because like you could imagine that maybe the helmet is thick and bulky, such that like his head may be better scaled to the rest of him.
Yeah, there you can kind of make an argument or kind of convince yourself that maybe his head's really small and then the body kind of works. But if you don't do that, then there's no way you could convince yourself that it's.
Isn't it cool how on his shoulder pad they painted the word "first" there?
Oh my God, they did. They had no idea.
Like shit, what can we put in this scroll work? Fuck it, just write
It
first.
was like the first YouTube comment on every video where somebody said,
This is where it originated.
yeah.
It has nothing to do with them being the first Legion, nothing at all.
I don't think so. No one knew that lore, Eric. Except everybody did. Anyone who's looking at this model and cares about it probably read every Horus Heresy book, and it's quick to jump on the forums and
Also,
defend.
They
W.
read Descent of Angels and liked it. Isn't that the first Dark Angels book that everyone kind of banned and said was pretty bad?
Yeah, I think that's what it was
I think it is.
Well, so, we could probably write an entire several-page blog post about this model.
But then we'd have to do it.
Yeah, we'd have to do it, but it would be kind of a return to form of what we used to have really long, lengthy blog posts talking about stuff. Like, we could really go to town on this model and talk about it.
Yeah,
and have comparison pictures and Photoshop stuff, with arrows, with question marks, what's going on here. I feel it would almost be worth it.
Almost.
Yeah.
Almost is the key thing. But I kind of feel if his legs were better looking,
we need to keep a close eye to when he gets back in stock again.
Well, because I feel some of it with a lot of them, if you cut off the legs,
it's only $35 American. That's not that horrible for.
That's not horrible for a model so bad, it practically burns the eyes out of your sockets.
I'm clicking on.
And I mean that means that Greg only spent $370.
I'm clicking on it. Actually, I'm going to the Forge website. Dark Angels.
Maybe you can get them on eBay. Maybe some people have already got.
Probably.
Remember,
to be honest,
the Cataphracti Praetor, he's bad too.
He's a little better, I think.
No, is it now?
Well, I guess you're probably right.
What were you saying?
But he's a Terminator.
I was going to say, to be honest, I simply wish that I could just get my hands on some of the key bits from these kits.
A lot of it.
If you could just get. If you could just get the shield, the helmet,
okay,
and the sword from that Praetor, and just combine it with something else, I could see something coming from it. This guy, on the other hand, I'm sure that you guys are going to tear apart the proportions and the setup and all that, but I don't mind him.
He actually has
I like him quite a bit.
He has a helmeted head and one without a helmet. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, me neither.
This one looks better than the other one, but so take a moment and think about the design of his leg armor. At the upper part of his thigh, the armor plating extends up past his belt. So And this point, like he literally couldn't move his legs up and down anymore because the armor plating would prevent him from moving. Why was it designed that way? It like literally makes no sense. And then on the other side, you can tell where he's lifting his leg up. They like kind of did they actually change the design of the armor such that it could kind of work?
It looks like they did.
It's like, what the fuck, guys? Like, did you even try? No, you didn't.
It's not even
Oh,
the same
no,
armor.
so, okay, it is the same. It's just, like, holy shit, look on, like, the side view of him. Look how awkward that looks. Like, holy shit. He's so thin. It, oh, God, I hate it. I hate Space Marines.
I think the regular Marine that we were just lambasting, he's better.
But like, I feel there are portions of this, like if you would like work at the proportions a little bit, like there's potential to be fine. But
Greg just sent an image, a cursed image. Thank you for registering an interest in the availability of this product. As soon as it's back in stock, we will send you an email notification. A cursed image.
My God,
this is a thing. This is a dangerous thing. God.
do you realize the path you tread?
Look
This is a path to damnation. Yeah, wow. Like his legs are so thin. Like, because one would imagine this is tactical dreadnought armor, such that the armor is like thick and bulky. So like he's like a skeleton in there.
Tactical.
Yeah, so just don't shoot his legs. You know,
That's the thing. Like all this armor and stuff they designed, like they literally have to be like so skeletally thin to even fit in the fucking. Oh my god! Holy shit! Okay, so take a look at this picture here that I have up right now. They have a painted picture behind the model. Look at his shoulder attachment and the shoulder pads. There are these like huge fucking gaps between like everything. That looks so bad. Like I can't even fathom.
maybe Lifeboat is right. He just skipped leg day.
That's actually a part of becoming a Space Marine.
Well, so when you become a Space Marine,
no, you just get completely enervated, like all your muscles waste.
They cut you in half, remove your abdomen. That's just gone. They take that out. They probably like split apart your like pelvis and stuff and refuse it together such that your legs are always adopting some squatting like shit pose. Your arms are severed and attached by your ears. Those are all important
elements of
becoming a Space Marine.
But only a Terminator.
Yeah, just imagine
only
if this guy crossed over the Rubicon Ultima. I think what it's called.
Something like that.
And then became just some chicken-legged Primaris dude.
Yeah, man. Be pretty cool.
Yeah, like, look at that. Look at how those arms attach. Like, holy shit. Like, whoever made this, did they even look at the model? How could they have accepted it?
I think it's just that's what a Terminator is, and it's been kind of that for a long time. So
it's so awful. How could anyone think this shit's cool?
It's also out of stock.
Well, it's because the Dark Angel fans haven't gotten models or anything for so long that they're just like, Dark Angels, I guess I have to be excited about this. Yeah. But as Eli mentioned, it's just part of that ingenious design.
Let's read the key features. The key features. I can't read them anymore on the screen.
Key features. dynamically posed, versatile leader for your Dark Angels Legion, protected by ornately decorated Cataphractii Terminator armor, ready to lead from the front with a classic sword and pistol combo.
What if your job was to write those?
I don't
That'd be
think
pretty
that was
cool.
anyone's job. It was just something the person was saddled with, like, oh, you also need to do this too.
I think it was actually Greg's job.
I wish.
That's probably how he got his 10 Praetors that he has sitting on his desk.
I was lying. I didn't get 10.
Why, folks, is
He
I
got
would
20.
volunteer to get paid to write item descriptions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've really lambasted the Forge World Dark Angels. So let's.
Fuck, dudes, it's getting close to 1 o'clock here. I should go to bed soon.
Yeah,
Yeah, and to be honest, I probably should get going soon as well.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we get talking about Forge World models, we go to spiral into.
Head on down to Clown Town.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're rough. They're
I wish
really
I had half the artistic eye that you guys have, because I didn't see hardly anything wrong with those models when they came out.
Ow.
Well,
I
I
was
mean,
just like,
the
oh my
longer
gosh,
you, the
it's
longer
Horus
you-
Heresy Dark Angels. They look sick. You know that.
Fucking tight.
they're
Yeah, fucking
so
sweet.
bad.
I guess just I feel the more you get into, like, particularly the Inc. 28 scene, like, you want to, like, oh, I just want like one cool Space Marine for this retinue or something, like, and you want to like put in that extra effort into it, and like you just start like realizing, like, like, why is the Space Marine much smaller than even the Gene Stealer Cultist model? And
Well, see,
like,
the thing is,
why
the
is
Stealer Cultist models are essentially the size of a Primaris Space Marine. It's just they're not wearing
in
armor.
armor?
And
So
then
it's just like lots of.
That's a fail.
Yeah.
All aboard the fail boat.
That's why I talk to my great friends such as you and Dark Tech, Greetings Way. Anytime that I'm working on a miniature, I just try to get a second opinion from someone who can actually tell me what's wrong with it.
It's always
And
good.
I'm learning more. I'm learning more as I go. But I guess I'm not quite as critical. I think there's always been something about Warhammer, though. If I can, I guess, leave on any note, it's that this fictitious world has sucked us all in for a reason, and as wonky as the proportions have been with Space Marines and Games Workshop models in general for an extremely long time, there's always been something endearing about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're still here,
even with
like
classic Space Marines.
Nah, yeah, I mean, we're still here. Like, we complain all the time, but
not these Dark Angels models in particular, but
no, I mean, and when we started the hobby, we didn't realize the stuff was really wonky and kind of awful looking. And I feel the three of us, as we've done more and more conversions, done more and more sculpting, and sort of gotten better at all of those aspects, and sort of now have more of the ability to do more and create things more in line with what like I might envision, then you sort of start noticing more and more of like, oh man, like, why did I ever accept that? And because I mean, even if you go back and look at earlier stuff on our blog, for instance, like we have a lot of models we made that I'm not too keen on, and like I question like how I ever could have accepted them. But so it's always just kind of a process, and that's certainly true with like weapon sizes and stuff as well. Like I've been converting smaller and smaller guns and weapons and swords and stuff, and I feel every time I go back and try and make more of them, they kind of just get smaller and smaller. So it's all a process, and in the end, like
That's
making
part of
or
the
doing
fun.
any conversion, like so long as you're out there doing that and like having fun with it, like that is really all that matters.
Yeah, and I guess admittedly, like some of the wonky proportions were just due to technology and like
Mhm.
that sort of thing, and it's kind of just gotten down into sort of almost like the DNA of the setting, and like some people like that, and they kind of like that sort of thing. But I mean, I feel we've for a while been trying to shift towards like more realism, and like that's obviously not for everyone, and it's not really GW's thing either. But I mean, that's
They've
fine. Like
certainly gotten a lot better at it, and I
it's
feel
true.
they've realized to some extent some of that. Now,
Yeah.
also, yeah, Dave, feel free to send us like more messages about like Imperial Guard and stuff. Like we could talk at length to you
I
about.
think he's referring to Instagram.
Oh, is that maybe I didn't read it right?
Yeah, now you send us any
Maybe I should just
questions you
take
like.
Eli's advice. Maybe
Yeah.
I should just take Eli's advice and just hate more things.
Well, I mean,
so,
in
but
many
But
regards, I
the
feel
more critical you are about things and like question like why was it done like this? Do you think that makes sense? The better like the better your models can be. I think the more you sort of think about it, and is always helpful.
in one sense, I agree, but in another, I have noticed that a lot of some of my favorite converters and artists within the community put out a lot of miniatures that have very unrealistic proportions that make almost make next to no sense, but they had an artistic vision, and
Yeah, no, that
that's
is
something
true.
that can, I not always, but I think that is something that can be hindered, if someone becomes too critical. If it's hard to open up your mind to the possibility of something fantastical and absurd, even, the more critical that you become. It's a balance, and I think
I
that
feel if
everybody
anything,
finds their way to strike it in a way,
Hmm.
but hell, if I was worried about realism, some of the you've seen some of the, I mean, I have issues. You can see in my miniatures I have issues, and there's a lot of them that I don't think ever would have came to be if I didn't just let go
yeah,
for
no,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
moment
yeah, yeah. There's certainly
and just let
always
everything
a
go.
balance, and like in some sense, for some, like if you just want to like creatively express yourself, maybe you don't want to spend like hours upon hours like fiddling over like changing this proportion or that. You just want to like create some idea, paint it, have fun with it, and move on to the next thing. And like that's cool. Like not every
Mhm.
single project or something you work on has to be like to the peak of your ability. Like
yeah, I feel just
And it
ultimately.
shouldn't. And it
yeah,
shouldn't.
yeah.
Actually, I don't think it should be. This is a conversation I had with another friend of mine who's a tattoo artist, but I was talking to him about the difference between being between making a work of art and being a master of your craft. And me and him kind of came to the same agreements that we use the example of writers. And I was talking about writers in like fictitious genres, and I was saying there's an interesting parallel that you can draw between someone like Stephen King and someone like George R. R. Martin.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as beloved as George R. R. Martin's works are to me, because they truly are, I think he's one of the best writers of our time. I truly do not believe that you could call him a master of his craft the way that you can call Stephen King master of his craft, even though I have not enjoyed a single Stephen King book as much as I've enjoyed the Song of Fire and Ice series. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that has everything to do with Stephen King's ability to create and move on.
Yeah, and like whenever thinking about that sort of thing, also like Isaac Asimov's like a really classic science fiction writer, like the Three
Mhm.
Laws of Robotics, all that stuff. Like
Right.
he in his lifetime, like he wrote like over 400 books to the point that he would like write like a book a month. And he was all
Yeah.
just like he would rather like get something out there, write something. He didn't want to go back and like rework it and make it better. He'd rather just move on to the next thing, explore something else. And there's certainly a lot of merit to that. And like,
Right.
Yeah,
And it's not that it doesn't necessarily make you better than than someone who can create an incredible work of art. I'm not saying either person isn't an artist, but that if that is a goal of yours, so to speak, to master your craft, then you have to balance within your mind the diminishing returns of refining one work of art. There's other works of art you could create, and you're robbing yourself and everyone who enjoys your work by wasting far too much time, just getting the kneecap on this cultist just right, and then all of a sudden 10 hours into that one miniature that, and when I say 10 hours past the point that you could have already painted it.
mm-hmm.
You could have built 5 more miniatures that were all based on these interesting ideas you had bouncing around in your head before you narrowed your focus so much on this one kneecap.
It's just like there certainly can be diminishing returns, but I guess it's just what you're excited about. If you're excited about it and want to keep going through it and explore different things, like I think that's just as good. But it's always good to have.
By all means, I don't want to discourage the kneecappers out there. If that kneecap bothers you to no extent, or if you work for a full year on this one kneecap and it excites you the entire time, go for it. That's the beauty of the hobby. You can make your miniatures look however you want, and as long as you love them and you enjoy them, like, damn it, screw everyone else. Just love them.
Ultimately, any project you come into, I think it's helpful if you even just like write down a few of like the goals and what you're trying to shoot for, and then just kind of work and build on that. And
like try to accomplish new things each time, because like it might not turn out exactly how you envision, but you might learn something new or like come across something else you want to explore. And I think just that creative flexibility that the hobby offers is really nice.
Agreed. My suggestion for anybody who's looking to expand their horizons in that same sort of sense, I would recommend to them to get more familiar with the idea of a study. If you can, take a chance on simply pulling a piece of artwork and trying to recreate it. I've learned so much in conversion work and in painting work from simply scrolling through Instagram or through going through the Inquisitorium or wherever it may be, and finding someone's miniature or a painting or a sketch, and just trying to reverse engineer it. Not for the purpose of making my own work that I can put up on a shelf and or calling it my own, but just for the venture of trying to understand how someone inspired me.
Yeah, get into that.
If I can understand what they did to inspire me, if there is a certain technique that they implemented that caught my eye in particular, I have to give it a shout out to Elroy. I'm sure that you guys have seen Elroy's work on Instagram. But I saw a tutorial that he posted on Instagram once of how he got to a particular point with a Night Haunt model. And there was something very fascinating to me about how unrecognizable the miniature was by the end, compared to the techniques that he used to get there, because he uses stippling. But because he uses so many glazes over the stippling in the process, it becomes this like it just becomes this strange combination of perfectly smooth but perfectly textured all at the same time. And all of his art looks like that. All of his miniatures look like that, and they're gorgeous for it. But that's actually how I created the mutant style demon like things for Gelida. Initially, that was a study on a different miniature to try to understand how Elroy got his stippling to look so good on miniatures. And then I actually did another study to try to understand the palette behind a particular painting by my favorite artist, Beksinski. And then when I combined the two, then you get what you see there to an extent. I mean, there's many different inspirations that all kind of got crammed together to make those miniatures, but I have a lot of artists to thank that may never know just how much they inspired that particular warband.
That's exciting, and hopefully in the next time we have you on, we can talk more specifically about Gelida and all sort of the inspirations and all the process. I think that will be fun, and I think that is kind of a good thing to hear, that like the more you can take inspiration from different sources, different artwork, genres, music, movies, whatever, I think is interesting, because everyone kind of comes into the hobby with different perspectives and things, and I think to see that distilled into models can be pretty exciting.
I agree. Well, gentlemen, I think I'm gonna have to let you go. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to bed. I work in the morning, as well as I'm sure that you all do as well. But this has been amazing, and I'm excited to talk to you guys, especially more about the setting of Gelida itself. It's not something that I've talked. You'll have the exclusive. I haven't had the chance to put it to paper nearly as much as you would expect. It's kind of, a lot of it is living in my head and in the heads of the people who actually attended the events.
That's cool.
But it's a lot richer and deeper than I think people might imagine. I had a lot of help, putting all those narratives together. I'm excited to break that all out and finally be able to talk to someone.
I really look forward to hearing it. But everybody, thanks for listening and to the stream here today and chatting and stuff. And
again, always feel free to send us questions or messages or comments through essentially any of the different various forms, be it Instagram, our blogs, email, etc. I guess we have a Discord server that we sparingly use. Any of that, don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be glad to talk to you and discuss stuff. So keep on enjoying the hobby, everyone. We'll talk to you again soon. Over and out.
See you, everybody.
Yeah, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.